Hello and welcome to Embrace Your Destiny, the podcast. My name is Sandra Dawes and I'm your host. And if you're new to the podcast, Embrace Your Destiny is all about sharing the stories of women who have gone from tragedy to triumph. They've overcome obstacles and they found that light at the end of the tunnel. They've learned lessons from it, and it's really about sharing those experiences and the lessons they've learned to support you in whatever you might be going through at this time. And today, my guest is Cyrstal Webster, and Cyrstal knows all too well how life can go from cloud nine to sub-basement in the blink of an eye. After marrying her soulmate and spending 2 years living abroad, she and her husband returned home to start their family, and instantly became pregnant. Less than a week later, her beloved aunt and uncle were tragically killed. Cyrstal fell into a deep depression, but was also excited to welcome a new life into the world and to bring some much-needed light into her family. At 32 weeks, during a routine ultrasound, she heard the words that should never have been uttered: "We need to speak with the doctor." Her Madelyn Elizabeth was born 2 weeks later on May 19th, 2010, and died the following day in her arms. And so I'm going to pass it over to Cyrstal to talk more about that experience and what she learned from that tragedy.
Oh my gosh, I learned quite a bit. And continue to learn every day a little bit more about who I am and, kind of my mission and destiny in life. So in 2010, shortly after Madelyn's death, we found out that, through the routine, protocol, we found out that Madelyn had a genetic condition that they said, oh, well, it can either be a fluke or, something could be in one of her parents that was passed along to her. And so we decided to to figure it out so we would know how that would affect us moving forward as we continue to try to grow our family. Well, come to find out, it was a genetic condition that her mother, passed along to her that made it, she couldn't survive without, once I gave birth to her. And the same thing would happen pretty much for any of her siblings if we decided to go the quote unquote natural route.
That must have been so devastating to hear.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it was terrible. Not only are you grieving the loss of your child, but you're also grieving the loss of, the quote traditional family. Throw on top of that the mom guilt of, when you're in that sort of downward spiral, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I killed my child. Whether that's right, wrong, or otherwise, that's the burden and the mindset you have on your heart, is that you did this, even though there was, I didn't do it intentionally. I didn't plan to do it, but.
No, it was totally out of your control.
Yeah, completely out of my control, but that's still where your mind kind of goes. And unfortunately, I think that anyone's mind would tend to head that direction. So it was like grief on top of grief, on top of grief, on top of grief, it felt like. And then, we talked to the specialists, we talked to the doctors, we talked to pretty much anyone that would take a meeting with us. And they said, well, based on this and this and this and this, we could try IVF, or in vitro fertilization. And, currently you have about a 6% chance of having normal, healthy kids. But, with the modern miracle of science, we don't see, they got on their little soapbox. We don't see any reason why you can't start your family. So we, jumped through all those hoops and went through 3 rounds of very intense IVF, which is its own roller coaster of emotions, because you get this good news and then this not so good news, and this, and this great news and this really terrible news. And it seems like every day up and down and up and down.
And you're on hormones as well, though, at that
exactly.
time. Yeah.
So multiply that by 1,000. Not only are does your body kind of think you're pregnant, you have the pregnancy hormones, but then you have 12 times those pregnancy hormones. I could look out the window and be mad that the grass is not green, or,
Yeah.
And 10 seconds later be crying because the ice in my soda has melted, or, whatever.
Emotional roller coaster for sure.
Absolutely. So we did 3 rounds of IVF, thinking each time, this is going to be the time. This is going to be the time. And Madelyn still does not have siblings. And I believe she's destined to be an only child. So once we had set out a plan saying from the get-go, okay, we're going to spend X number of dollars. We're going to try this X number of times. And at the end of that, we're not going to say, okay, one more time. Okay, maybe this time will be different. Because you can what if yourself to death.
Yeah.
And one more time yourself to death. And so we said, okay, 3 times. And that's it. Then we explore other options. We change something. We do something different. And so at the end of our 3 rounds of IVF, we actually stuck to our plan and said, okay, we can't keep doing this. And at that point, we kind of had to reevaluate, rethink things. And I went through another grieving process because I was losing the dream of having a biological family that was, like biologically mine. Because now the options are adoption or egg donation, or, something where they don't have my genetic makeup. And you don't realize, there was a lot of things I didn't realize I needed to think through or grieve or whatever until they arise. You don't realize that's a big deal until that option is taken away from you.
Yeah.
So we, went through that process, and still on a daily basis tend to have highs and lows and grieve the loss of our daughter Madelyn, the loss of our biological family, a lot of different things. But I believe that it has made us a stronger couple. My husband and I are still mostly happily married. There are always days. I'm a stronger person. I'm part of a stronger team. I get to wake up every morning and say, the worst thing that could possibly happen to me has already happened. And if I got through that, I can get through today.
Right.
No matter what happens. And that's liberating.
It is.
If you really think about it, you're like, dude, I can get through anything.
Yeah. When you reflect on, yeah.
Still in the traffic jam in the moment, I'm ticked off that I'm not where I need to be. But I'm like, if you really sit and think about it, you're like, you know what? No big deal. Nobody died. I'm just going to run late. It happens.
Right. Yeah. It really shifts your perspective on everything, really.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then took me really almost a full 5 years after the passing of Madelyn to really kind of find my new normal, find my new happy. Life was never going to be the same. But I couldn't continue to live my life almost waiting to die, just kind of going through the motions to get through the end of the day.
Right. Existing.
Yes,
Yeah.
existing. I really needed to do more than just survive. And, I'd always wanted to honor Madelyn's life and legacy in some way from the moment I knew that she wasn't going to survive, from the moment, I got to hold her in my arms. I knew that she was a special soul. I mean, I am a little bit biased, seeing that I'm her mom.
Right.
But I knew that she was just, her story, her legacy, her life couldn't be in vain, couldn't be just 8 hours. It needed to live on. But I didn't know the right way to do that. I didn't know what really spoke to my heart, whether it was to, form a foundation or do some sort of 5K fun run. I just couldn't find what really, really spoke to me. And so I was going to go big or go home. Like I was just going to wait until the perfect thing came around. And then one day it hit me like a bolt of lightning, what I needed to do to honor Madelyn, to honor my grieving process, and to kind of help others find hope and help others through their own grieving process. Along my entire grief journey, which honestly never truly ends, people from the outside would say, you have such a good spin on this. You have, how are you so upbeat? How are you moving today? And I felt like maybe that was something that I needed to find a way to share.
Absolutely.
With others.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it.
But it's a way.
It's a way, exactly. And so in 2015, the concept of Sharing Solace was conceived.
And tell us more a little bit about what Sharing Solace is.
Sure. So Sharing Solace is actually a community of grievers for grievers. So we as Sharing Solace provide tangible gifts and a meaningful community to those that are grieving some sort of tragic loss. And that could be any sort of loss. Loss of a person, the loss of a pet, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job. I feel that grief is grief. And you can grieve pretty much a loss of anything. And so we create these tangible gifts to be given to those that are grieving. They keep them near their heart as long as it brings them comfort and solace. Kind of at some point, it won't do that anymore. That's just the nature of grief. What once brought them comfort now kind of takes them backwards. And when that starts to happen, you know that it is time to release that heavy grief on your heart. And it's time to pay forward your peace to another griever, to give them some of the strength that your gift gave you. And the backside of each of our pieces has a unique identifier on them. So you can, by registering it on our website, you can actually follow the token as it moves from person to person.
Oh, nice.
And help to build, to help reduce that isolation and loneliness that so often accompanies grief.
Absolutely, because I think that when you're going through something like that, you feel like nobody else gets it, that nobody else truly understands what you're going through. And to feel that kind of isolation is so devastating, because to feel like you're the only one and that nobody else can really support you or understand what you're going through in a meaningful way can be very depressing. And so
Absolutely.
I think that it's great that you're providing this opportunity to connect in a meaningful way, to let people know that they're not alone in their grief, whatever it is that they're grieving. Because, I feel like that understanding that we're all going through something at some point in our lives, and that we can support each other, that we can share these stories and really, encourage and support one another and let people know that you can get through this. It might not feel like it when you're in the depths of that grief, it might feel insurmountable, but there is a way to continue to live in a purposeful way. And I think that's
exactly
so important.
Yeah. So that is kind of our mission of Sharing Solace, is to provide support for those that really need it, in maybe a little bit of an unconventional way. And it kind of meshes the tangible gifts and the online community in a way that I wish was around in 2010. When I couldn't get out of bed in the morning because I didn't have the mental or physical strength to do so.
Yeah. Cyrstal, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from this experience?
Probably that quote from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming.
Right.
Just put one foot in front of the other. Do the best you can. I believe it's a Maya Angelou quote. Do the best you can until you know better, then do better.
Right.
Forward motion is forward motion. And if the best you can do is get out of bed today and move to the sofa, then maybe tomorrow you can get out of bed and take a shower before you go to the sofa.
Right. Yeah. Baby steps.
Baby steps, absolutely. Both with my grief and with the process of getting Sharing Solace off the ground. Baby step after baby step after baby step will eventually add up to miles.
Absolutely. And I think that when you're going through that grief, if people haven't lost somebody significant in their own lives, they don't get it. And I feel like they think that grief should have an end date.
Yes.
So it's so important for everyone to understand that it is a process, and especially if you're going through it, to know that you need to be patient with yourself and with the process. There is no 90-day expiration date on grief, and that it's something that we have to work through at our own pace.
Yes. And you can, it is, grief in and itself is a roller coaster. You can be up today and down tomorrow. And you can be 10 steps back in a week and 2 miles ahead in 3 days type of thing.
Oh yeah, because things are going to happen, whether it's a certain day of the year that triggers those emotions, or
Yes.
Going to the mall and seeing something, you know what I mean? Like there's just so many small things that can sort of just trigger that downward spiral, and you just never know when it's going to happen sometimes.
Exactly. So you really need to strive to be moving in a forward direction, but allow yourself to take steps backwards.
Yeah, and not beat yourself up about it.
Exactly. And don't compare, your grief journey to anybody else's. They, that other person grieves, even if it appears to be the same way as you do. It's not. And they're taking a different path than you are.
That's right. And Cyrstal, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's going through something similar in their own life right now?
Keep moving, which is actually maybe a little bit different than keep swimming.
Right.
Probably the best thing that I ever did for myself, especially in the super deep, deep depths of grief, when I didn't want to get out of bed, when I didn't want to see or talk to anyone, when I just needed to exist for another day type of thing. I one day decided, okay, I need to leave the house, but I don't know where to go. So how about if I go to the gym? Because I can put in headphones and I don't have to talk to anybody at the gym. I don't have to get up and shower or do my hair or put on makeup or wear anything other than tennis shoes. I don't have to get dressed really. I just have to throw on some athletic gear.
Right.
It was the easiest way to get out of the house without actually having to talk to anyone or do anything or function as a human. I didn't have to adult at all.
Right. You could just do your own thing.
Yeah. And everybody else was in their own little world. You go to the gym, nobody really ever wants to talk to each other because they're doing their own little workout or little thing or watching their TV show or whatever. And I would go and I would get on the treadmill and I would watch some 90s sitcom rerun for 30 minutes or 45 minutes and walk on the treadmill. And then I'd get off and I'd go home. And then I felt like I did something that day. And then I started to say, well, maybe if I can do this for 30 minutes, I can do it for 45. And if I can walk at 2 miles an hour, maybe I can walk at 3 miles an hour. And just, a little baby step here, a little baby step there. And now I'm lifting weights and have gym friends and go several times a week and do other things too.
Right. And I think that's the magical part of it, right? Is that when you take action, which is why I think that your advice is so great about keep moving, is that once you take action and you have those small successes, you start to ask yourself what else is possible. And so you just keep stretching yourself. You just keep pushing yourself a little bit further and you start to challenge yourself and really step outside your comfort zone, but it's not this gigantic leap outside your comfort zone. You're just taking those little baby steps. And like you said, those baby steps can lead up to a mile. Heck, if it's long enough, it can lead up to a marathon. You know what I mean? So it's just about understanding that and not being afraid to take those baby steps, no matter how small they might be.
Mm-hmm. Forward progress is forward progress.
Right.
Whether it's a leap or a scoot.
Right. I like that. Cyrstal, did you have any specific tools or techniques that you used through your grieving process to help you work through it? Like, did you journal? Was it prayer that helped you? Did you meditate? Like, what really helped you?
Right. I definitely did and still do see a professional counselor.
Okay.
About once a month, once every 6 weeks or so. Just if for no other reason, it's because I am paying her to listen to me talk for an hour. And I can talk about whatever I want,
Yeah, no judgment, no
bitch, moan, and complain.
No bias. Yeah.
Exactly. Where, if you do that with your friends, one, you kind of learn to stifle yourself as far as what you say to them, or, okay, maybe I shouldn't. I whined to him last week. Maybe I shouldn't whine to him again this week.
Yeah.
There's something freeing about paying the copay and making a stranger listen to you talk. So that was definitely one thing that I did much more frequently than I do now, but I still continue to do. And I do journal, and I don't want to say that I enjoy it. Kind of like I don't really enjoy the gym, but I like the effects of the gym and of journaling. I like knowing that I'm done with it for a while.
Right.
And I started just by having, like now I can sit and journal and write, a novel if I needed to. But I started out saying, okay, here are 3 things that went right in my day, and just bullet point, and then whatever it was. I got out of bed on time today.
Right.
And then I would always write 3 things that I was grateful for that day. And not the traditional, I could always write, I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head, that I have plenty to eat, that I have a loving husband. I tried to, those were given. Those are given. I'm always grateful for those things. I tried to write unique, different things that I was grateful for every day, so that I started to look for those things that weren't right in my day or that I was grateful for, so that I could write them down in my journal at the end of the evening.
I think that that's such a powerful exercise, especially when you're going through something, experiencing any kind of loss or any kind of real challenge or tragedy in your life, is to seek out things to be grateful for, because it can be so easy to fall into that trap of thinking that nothing is going good in your life.
Right. Yes.
And so when you can look for the little things to be grateful for, I think that that's such a powerful exercise, because it really helps you to shift your perspective.
One thing I also found that helped, I hate to use the word but, B-U-T, because it basically negates anything that you said prior to that.
Yeah.
Right? But when I would have a negative thought or say something down, depressing, negative, when I did that, I would immediately say, but the sun is shining today. But I got to have a Diet Coke this afternoon,
Yeah.
to kind of help me think of something positive. I don't mind using but when the thing I'm trying to negate is negative.
Right. Yeah, that is a good exercise. Cyrstal, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the listeners?
Whatever you're going through, you're not going through it alone. There are others that have been through something, maybe not exactly like what you're going through, but similar. And reach out. People want to help and want to share their story and hear your story, but they're not always. Sometimes they need that little prompt to know that it's okay to support you.
Absolutely. And so if you're listening on the road or at the gym or walking your dog and you don't have access to the show notes right now, you will have links back in the show notes on how to find Cyrstal, her website and social media, so that you can connect with her if you need support through whatever grief you might be going through right now. I definitely encourage you to touch base and learn more about what she does. And yeah, there'll be more about Cyrstal and the initiative that she's working on. So Cyrstal, thank you so much for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And I will see you guys next week. Till then, have a great day. Bye.